Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Here's a story that'll get your attention. And this is like a modern day nightmare. But a man arrested in a mistaken identity case was locked in a mental hospital in Hawaii for 2 years, protesting not his innocence, but that he wasn't who they thought he was. They said, of course you're going to say that. You're crazy. So theguardian.com has the story, but it's been all over the news, and I actually read several different versions of this. It was sent to me by a whole bunch of people. And again, this is, like I said, just a nightmare. I think there have been movies based on this. And in fact, I believe at one point in time, Elmer J. Fudd, millionaire, found himself in the same situation. Remember, he owns a mansion and a yacht. A homeless man wrongly arrested for a crime committed by someone else and locked up in a mental health hospital for nearly 3 years was quietly released. Recent court documents show in Hawaii. In a court petition filed Monday night, the Hawaii Innocence Project asked a judge to rescind the man's arrest and to correct his records. The court filings detail the man's plight, which started when he was sleeping on a sidewalk while waiting for food outside of a Honolulu shelter in 2017. So the shelter is handing out food to homeless people. He's there, he's homeless. He falls asleep on the sidewalk, and a police officer comes by and wakes him up. So he assumed he's being arrested for sitting or lying on a public sidewalk, which is apparently something they do there. Actually, the officer mistook him for a man named Thomas Castleberry, who had an outstanding warrant from 2006. So the outstanding warrant was 11 years old, and the cop goes, hey, I think this is the guy. According to the Innocence Project of Hawaii, the two had never met, and the man who was arrested never said he was Castleberry. The police officer just assumed that to be true. So this man's lawyers argued the mix-up could have been avoided if police had simply compared the men's fingerprints or photographs, and instead, Hawaii officials locked this man in a Hawaii state hospital for nearly 3 years and put him on psychiatric drugs. You see, you got to put him on them psychiatric drugs because he thinks he's somebody else. Imagine that. In January of 2020, officials realized their mistake and they quietly released him, and he had 50 cents on him when they released him. The more he vocalized his innocence by asserting that he is not Mr. Castleberry, the more he was declared delusional and psychotic by staff and doctors and heavily medicated, the petition said. No one would believe him or take any meaningful steps to verify his identity and determine that he was telling the truth. He was not Mr. Castleberry. For 2 years and 8 months, hospital staff and his own public defenders refused to believe him. So they actually assigned him an attorney who said, I don't believe you either, which is kind of strange. Then a hospital psychiatrist actually one day sat down and thought, interesting, we should look into this. According to court documents, all it took were a few Google searches and phone calls to confirm that the man they were looking for was on another island when Castleberry was initially arrested. So the real Castleberry, meanwhile, is actually sitting in a prison in Alaska. So they thought they had the guy in Hawaii while the guy was in a prison in Alaska. The Hawaii Innocence Project was critical of the police and also the public defender's office, the attorney general, and the state hospital, stating that all parties share in the blame for this gross miscarriage of justice. And, this is the thing. Like I said, there's movies based on this. There's cartoons. Like I said, I'm Elmer J. Fudd, millionaire. I own a mansion and a yacht. But the point is that you get arrested. They bring you into some place, and they go, we think you're somebody else. And you go, no, I'm me. And you say your name. They go, oh, you're crazy to say that. Wouldn't somebody somewhere say, okay, who do you think you are? Person says a name. Where do you think you live? Guy gives an address. What's your mother's name? He knows that. What's your birthday? He's got that. What elementary school did you go to? Turns out he's got that also. Sooner or later, and again, later is like 3 minutes later, you'd realize this guy knows too much about the other guy. Now, I understand that it's quite possible that you could pass yourself off as somebody else convincingly if you put enough work into it and learn the details of someone else's life. You could, right? You could. But you could also very quickly probably unravel the story. And so the fact that the guy goes, I'm not who you think I am, they say, oh, you're crazy. That is the crazy stretch here. That is the real stretch that I think causes the trouble here. So we all know what's going to happen here is the mental hospital, the people he dealt with, the public defender, all of the different people who touched this case are all going to say, we're overworked, we're underpaid, our caseloads are crazy. The public defender's going to go, I had 150 clients that day. That day, okay? The guy told me he wasn't who they said he was, but he doesn't have any ID, so I just assume he's saying it to get out of, I've had other people say that. And the mental hospital is going to say, look, we've got facilities here for X number of people, and we've got 2X people here. Okay, it's algebra now, but you understand. They're going to say, we got so many people here, we'd like to spend more time with each and every one of them, but we can't. So we diagnose him quickly. The guy's got a mental problem. He needs medication. We medicated him. But no one spent the 5 minutes to ask him the basic questions. Okay, who do you think you are? Where do you live? What's your address? Mother's name? Where'd you go to school? That kind of stuff. Because it wouldn't take that long to figure that out, especially with the internet. This didn't happen in the 1950s. This happened recently. In the year 2019, this man was in prison. The prison he was in a mental hospital. And the mental hospital probably has access to the internet. At least the administrators do. Somebody could have said, show us the records for the guy you want. There's an outstanding warrant. Let's see the man's photograph for the outstanding warrant. Let's see his fingerprints. Let's see. And so the idea that you could slip through the cracks like this and spend more than 2 years, almost 3 years in a mental hospital, and the reason you're there is that you insist you are who you really are. Man's not claiming to be Jesus Christ. He's not claiming to be Caesar. He's not claiming to be Napoleon. He's claiming to be a guy who's a resident of Hawaii who was homeless. And they go, oh, you must be crazy. And so that is bizarre. And so there were a bunch of people who touched this case, a bunch of people who screwed up, and they should be held accountable, but they probably won't. And so I don't know if this man's going to pursue this or not. It'd be interesting to see what he would pursue. But he spent more than 2 years, almost 3 years, in a mental hospital, a mistaken identity case, locked in a Hawaii mental health hospital for 2 years because he insisted he was who he really was. Bizarre case. Thanks for sending it, everyone, from theguardian.com. Nathan, Vincent, Tim, Jason, Andrew, David, Ben, Isa, Ian, Rebecca, Damon, and Steve all sent it. It's quite a host of people there, my friends. Nathan, Vincent, Tim, Jason, Andrew, David, Ben, Isa, Ian, Rebecca, Damon, and Steve. Thanks a lot, people. Questions or comments? Put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. But I don't want to go outside. There's people out there.